There's no doubt that all around the world today, citizens are angry. It really doesn't matter whether the economy is an advanced one or a poorly performing economy. Somehow citizens are angry. And I think that a lot of the anger is expressed in a sense of dissatisfaction with existing system structures and procedures and processes. And sometimes citizens don't know how to organize the anger. And so the anger becomes really dangerous. That's why the anger leads to violence. And we see a lot of violence these days, especially against children, girls and women especially. We see a lot of frustration, and we see a lot of hatefulness that comes out of desperation to be heard and to be understood by the other party. But because it's not properly organized, it is so hateful, it becomes toxic. We see quite a lot that's not right in the kind of aggression that comes out of what could be healthy conversation. So citizens are indeed angry. I recall that it must have been in 2013 or thereabout, I was speaking to a group of young people, very much like the kind of demography that we have in this room today. And I talked about the office of the citizen. And I said that the highest office in the land is not the office of the president. It's not the office of the vice president. It's not the office of the Senate president or the Speaker of the House. It's not the office of the state governor. It's the office of the citizen. It's the age of the citizen. And so when citizens express their dissatisfaction in ways that appear to be uncivilized, unhealthy, toxic, it is because the necessary social capital that would have supported a healthier negotiation of the contract does not exist. If you brought this conversation to Nigeria, our own country, for which you are gathered, you see that it tells a story about the dismal failure of governance. In the 56 years since our independence, governance has produced less than what it should produce. I love to look at governance as though it were a market. So I think of governance and I say the market of governance. And when I think of governance as a market, then necessarily that market must have the forces that demand and the forces that supply. And so when I look at the forces that supply, I see some semblance of coherence in the sense that whether it's been under military rule or democracy, we've had structures of government. That's the supply side. But when you look at the other side of that market, which is the demand side, that's about informed, active, and engaged citizenry. But that has not been our lot We have not had citizens that organized on the basis of coherence of what they expect of government, and who have not in any articulate way expressed the quality of governance below which they would not engage. And so the absence of the demand side of governance has led to dismal failure, because the supply side of governance has behaved exactly the way monopolists behave. The monopolist has no incentive for efficiency. The monopolist is a prize giver. The monopolist has no interest in what you consider to be your quality. They simply dictate quality and price. Is it a surprise that the price of governance in our society can be anything that anyone chooses it to be without delivering a product that you can recognize? So this absence of the demand side of governance, acting in perpetuity almost, because it still doesn't exist, has created an incentive for failure. How else can you define failure than to think of Nigeria as a country with boundless possibilities? A country where you could imagine that all the variables that you need for production frontiers that are significantly better than many of the countries that we look up to have amounted to nothing. So what does this say? This says that the failure is internalized as a way of life. And only those who somehow, in a not very organized and deliberate, intentional way, escape the failure and the consequences of the failure, manage to be better than the others. That's not sustainable. That sows an incredible seed of implosion in any society. How else can you define our failure than the fact that a country which, by virtue of all the factors of economic growth available to it, could have, if not 2 times, but at least 3 times of its GDP, stomps around the place, being happy that it is the largest economy in Africa on a GDP that is less than $500 billion today. It's now just about 434 billion or so. A GDP per capita of $2,500. Poverty population of more than 100 million at 61% based on the Bureau for Statistics data of 2000, last household survey of 2010-2011. But what's amazing about all of this is that there's a certain class that does not recognize the failure. There's a class that actually thinks we're doing okay. It's just that we have little problems here and there. How can we be comfortable in a society where by 2050 we're going to be the 3rd largest population in the world, overtaken countries like the United States. And already, at a population that is just about half of the over 300 million that we're projected to become, we've got some 14 million children who are of school age but out of school. We've got certain states in this country where the enrollment rate is less than 20%. We've got disparity in education, access, and completion. That is sometimes for every one person in a state, there's another state that probably has about 5 people. You're going to build an inclusive society that way? It's almost impossible. So here's my idea. I love the word disruption. I have been so fascinated by disruption as a concept that radically challenges the prevalent thinking. Because at the pace we are going, what my father used to call I think he says it is the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. It's not going to get us far. It's going to destroy us. The tranquilizing drug of gradualism cannot fix what we've got. So we have to radically change what we have as a supply-demand gap. So I was thinking, is it possible that there are people here who could become the arbiters of citizen governance? A citizen governance that buys out the existing class of people that provide governance. Simply say to them, thank you for your failure, we pay you for it now. And we're ready to underwrite the failure that would have continued to happen throughout the ages by guaranteeing you the quality of income that you could even index to what could have been pillaged from the public treasury. Is it possible that such a buyout option would be an approach that redefines governance from the premise of what the demand side should have been asking for all along that it failed to do? Just imagine a situation where Nigeria becomes the country that truly practices that word, homegrown democracy, where it is about citizens competing in squads to say, we have the best set of teams that are representative of what this country really is. And we've got the ideas of how to supply governance based on our demand for governance. Wouldn't it be something worthy to try? Because I'm afraid that at the rate we are going, we don't want the piece of the graveyard. there are too many people that are not like you. If you think you're angry, you have another thing coming. They're not angry at anybody, they are angry at you and I. It is of utmost urgency that there be a way to disrupt the idea that we have all the time to fix all that is broken. The fiercest urgency is now. And it has to take a thinking process that challenges the status quo. I think it's the French philosopher, also Montesquieu, that said that that which is worse than a tyrannical oligarchy is apathetic citizenship. This level of apathy in the face of this profound failure cannot in any way be sustainable. So the unsustainability offers us a space in what Malcolm Gladwell called the tipping point. It's the fact that a remnant would say, we don't want to tip in the direction of a Humpty-Dumpty. We have to tip in the direction of a viable entity. Let the challenge begin. Amongst your generation, you shouldn't just be talking about not too young to run. What is the package for making the society not become a Humpty-Dumpty? Let the challenge of nation building begin. Thank you.